All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for This Ability Podcast. I'm your host and producer, Mary Bodwin, and today our guest is Sierra Stevens. Thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your background, things like that.
So I am from Eunice, Louisiana, and I'm a mom of 2 children. One of them is Micah. He's autistic and he's non-speaking. Our daughter is Mila, and she's been diagnosed with ADD. I'm a nurse. Husband is also a nurse. We enjoy spending time together as family, going fishing, doing things with the kids. Playing in the rain is one of our favorites.
That's awesome. You said that your daughter was diagnosed with ADD, right? And you're a parent of children you have a child that has autism, your son Micah, right? And then has ADD, right? So talk to us about that. When did you guys know that he was autistic?
So Micah was diagnosed since roughly around age 3. We kind of had little signs here and there from a speech pathologist that worked with us during Early Steps program. So he's been diagnosed since then. Mila has been diagnosed with ADD, I want to say within the last 2 to 3 years. You know, we kind of had suspicions of some of the things that she would do because I also have ADD. And once we kind of noticed her inability to focus, forgetting things, you know, I was like, gosh, she's just like me. Took her to the doctor and then got the diagnosis. And really and truly, it's helped us tremendously getting the diagnosis, because sometimes getting that confirmation of knowing, hey, this is what's going on, you're able to put 2 and 2 together, then you're able to help your child.
Now, you mentioned that you're a nurse, your husband's a nurse, right? So you guys were in the medical field and you have now 2 children that each have a diagnosis. Was that a surprise to you guys? Like, how well did you take the news? Did you think, okay, I've studied about autism, I've seen patients with autism?
So for my husband, especially with Micah, he kind of knew, if I'm being completely honest. I can't say I was in denial. I was kind of hoping that maybe it wasn't that. Not that I didn't want my child to have that. It's just, It was such a difficult thing to accept, being that I was also a new mom. It isn't something I'm new to fairly. As a nurse, I've worked with a lot of different children with developmental disabilities.
Sure.
And really and truly, I love working with children, even adults. It wasn't a challenge working with him or helping him. It was more so a challenge accepting him and trusting that I can be the best mom for him, even though he couldn't speak per se. And for Mila, it was kind of like, being that we were already faced with accepting Micah's diagnosis, it just kind of flowed, because it's like, okay, I know this happened. Me and, Dad working together. We were already going through it with Micah. To us, it was, can't say it was an easier transition, but it was fairly easier for us to just kind of, we're okay. Everything's fine. So
you mentioned about the challenging parts, and I was going to ask you about that. But what's been the most rewarding?
To be honest, there's so many things that are rewarding. I'll point out one of the number one things, and this is something my dad shared with me. My dad passed away about 2-3 years ago to cancer, and his specific specialty was working with autistic children his whole life that he did. Wow. He told me, he said, Sierra, he said, children like your son, not necessarily all of them are the same, we know that. However, he said, you can learn a lot by just sitting and observing, just watching him. And that stuck with me. And the more and more I did that, I learned more and more about Micah. I learned more about even our daughter. And then it kind of made me think, I was like, we're kind of alike here. It's rewarding because you get to see them do certain things and wonder why they're doing it or what they're looking at. So like, for example, Micah has had, I don't want to call it a fixation, but that's the term that they use per se whenever a child likes one thing and that's all they like. So Micah, it's been ceiling fans. So he's been building ceiling fans since he was about 3 with magnetic tiles, and he's progressed to using stem building sticks. It got to a point to where I'm like, okay, is he gonna like something else? No. He didn't, but it progressed to where Micah looks at blueprints of ceiling fans and he's drawing 3D images of ceiling fans. It's amazing, and it's mind-blowing, but even more so whenever you have a child that doesn't speak. Most people think about it as, well, he can't speak, he can't tell you this, he can't tell you that. But the thing is, it's your perspective. How you look at things will either positively impact you or negatively. And for me, I had to not set expectations on him, because by doing that, it's almost like when something were to happen, or say, for example, he didn't say this by this age or that age, I would get disappointed. But I looked at it from a way of thinking, you know what? Whenever he does, great. If he doesn't, still great. I'm going to encourage him. I'm going to support him, see what he likes, and just keep feeding him and encouraging the things that he can do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So how does he communicate with you?
So he communicates by pointing at things. He'll say certain words, even though it doesn't sound like it should. So like, for example, his way to say cereal is co.
Okay.
But we know that's what he wants because he always says co, and he points. So he's communicated by pointing, saying certain things, certain gestures. Like, for example, whenever he's in pain, that was a big thing for us. Now he learns to say hurt, because I've showed him, and you got to be consistent and say hurt. Does it hurt here? And again, having a nursing background, I thank God for that every day.
Yes.
We know what to look for. Even though he can't speak to us. We, as nurses, we were taught to assess. And a lot of those visible signs that we observe from, just people in general, were able to, kind of help him. So
I wanted to ask you, have you found any particular resource to be of a special help to you and your family?
I'm going to have to say, number one, Families Helping Families has been, oh my goodness, just a great deal of support. In specific, without going into too much detail, we're having a difficulty with both of the children at school, and we couldn't gain a hardship to transfer. Whenever I reached out to Families Helping Families and explained the story and the situation, Miss Nicole and Miss Brenda, even all of those that are involved there, was very helpful. It was a great help because as a parent of a child with disabilities, or you're aware of some of the rights, but there's a lot of things that you're not aware of that people are not going to take the time to inform you of. But they did that, and it was mind-blowing. It touched my heart, and I tell them every day, I love y'all and I thank y'all so much, because you don't know just how much that helped our entire family.
I've heard a lot of great things about Families Helping Families of Acadiana, and I've experienced many of their events and the advocacy, the Disability Awareness Day at the Capitol recently. That was a lot of fun. Right.
Also, LaCan, from the first time I met Christy, she's just amazing.
She is.
Learning about her and her son, it's inspiring, and it inspired me. She actually encouraged me to share testimony with the kids at the state capitol. Had I not known about that opportunity, it could have, I'll say this, what happened to our children was such a impactful thing, even though at the time it was rough. Sharing that was so helpful to so many people.
Yes.
And the feedback was like a confirmation of that, doing the right thing, and how their story really touched them, of the fact that, I stood by both of the kids' side and kind of fought for them.
Our state reps and legislators, they want to see and hear stories from a diverse group of people. And it helps for new people to come up and share their story, because that's how you can get things enacted upon. And we want to make sure that disability rights stay on the forefront. So let's talk about your role as a nurse. You're a mental health nurse, is that correct?
I just identify as just a nurse. As we mentioned, Dad is a nurse. As far as my ability to go to work like him, it's not, as much. However, I'm still grateful because I do work with a nursing agency that allows me to work in the field. I absolutely enjoy just really helping people. I love helping people, no matter if it's mental health. I've worked with veterans. I've worked with even younger kids. And for me, to be honest, it's always an amazing experience, because there's always something you can learn from them. Even though every child is different, you still may be able to learn something you can implement with your child. And most recently, I had a patient, and this was my first case of working with hospice. It's amazing because, and I have to go back to speaking about losing my dad to cancer, how I believe in my heart that God literally prepared me to manage and help my patient that I recently had. After my dad passed, I was already comfortable with death and dying, transitioning. Whenever I got to the point to where I actually have a patient and I'm caring for that patient, it was so touching. It was mind-blowing, because it's not often you get to pray with a patient. It's not often you get to hear a patient that is content and knowing that they've fulfilled their life. And I've learned so much from my patient. She was a professor. She was a college professor. She was such an amazing lady. And when she transitioned, her family thanked me, recognized and saw that I really and truly cared, I guess.
Well, and listen, as someone who's not a nurse or worked in the medical field at all, I appreciate people like you, because that is comforting to know that someone who cares is with someone in their final moments of life. It's comforting to me. I would want that. Thank you for doing that. And thank all the nurses. Y'all are awesome.
Thank you. They did a documentary on this. I've been skating for like 5 years, and it's something me and my daughter started around the time my dad was losing cancer. After watching the documentary, a lot of skaters were sharing their side of how it helped them mentally whenever they're on the verge of suicide and depression. Once I began skating, I would always listen to motivational music while my dad was transitioning. Outside of having a prayer life, which is more important, I found it to be very calming, relaxing for me, because that same rush of dopamine that you get from eating a candy or something sugary, and you just, feel that high, you can get the same thing from skating, doing exercise. Like for me, I was a runner before, and it's called a runner's high. You're replacing, say if it's a medication, if it's a food that you shouldn't be eating, to incorporate that with something healthier to positively feed that dopamine per se, that rush that you're looking for. Music, yoga, stretching, skating.
Listening to you, it reminded me of kind of what I call my happy place, right? And it sounds like skating is yours and for your daughter as well. But I like to ride my bicycle, outside. This is not like a stationary bike. I like to ride outside. Each day or each week, I kind of have a little goal. Okay, I'm going to go down this road next week or this road. And boy, one day I'm going to challenge that hill, and then when I do it, it's I feel like that sense of accomplishment, So and it's a good, healthy way.
Right.
And a little bit of peacetime for myself too.
Definitely.
You've recently joined the board of directors for the St. Landry Abilities. So tell us what St. Landry Abilities is.
St. Landry Abilities is basically an organization where most of us who are a part of the board have a child that has a disability. We come together. They do different things to reach out with moms and dads that are in the community, to bring them together and give them opportunities to connect with others in the community. One of the things that it has greatly helped me with prior to becoming a board member was I felt alone and lost a lot of times, and alone, feeling like I'm the only one going through this. And granted, different children with autism are different and they vary. However, it's always great to be able to talk to someone who may be going through a similar experience, because they understand. And I think that's what led to me wanting to be a part as a board member, because I felt like, these ladies and this organization is great. I'm already a part of it and learning and connecting with these people, but I want to do more and help other moms who may be dealing with this. So that's what encouraged me to join.
It's good to connect with other people. Let's talk about sickle cell awareness, or sickle cell in general, because I know you're an advocate and you're also a patient of sickle cell, right? So we're going to talk about that. Now, the airing of this podcast is going to be in 2026, but September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and this is going to be forever, right? So we can talk about sickle cell awareness. Now, you've talked about your own experience with sickle cell, so let's talk about your journey a little bit.
I was diagnosed since I was, as long as I can remember, since birth. My genotype, I hope I'm saying that right, is SC. There are different forms, SS, SC, beta thalassemia, so on and so forth. SC, a lot of people aren't familiar, or they try to say, oh, so you have a trait. They're not knowledgeable. I've experienced a lot of doctors that has saw me as a patient, and they kind of blew me off as, well, you have a trait. No, it's not a trait. I have learned, in particular with my condition, that although my symptoms is not as severe, and my crisis is not as often as someone with SS. It has greatly impacted my life from how I eat, how I exercise, where I exercise, a lot of those different things that people don't realize. It really affects your whole life. And for me, whenever I first went into nursing school, that was one of my objectives, to learn more about my condition, not only to help myself, but to help others. About 20 years ago, I was in the gym. I, did a little bit of research, and I was able to find out that whenever we go into a sickle cell crisis, is what it's called, we lack nitrous oxide.
Okay.
And what the nitrous oxide does is it kind of helps with the circulation and the oxygenation in our blood. Crazy thing about that is I remember taking a supplement, nitrous oxide supplement. And this is while I was bodybuilding at the time, over 20 years ago. And I had been doing it at least 5-6 years, bodybuilding, and I had never had a crisis. And I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor was like, "Are you sure you have it?" Because they even did lab work that'll detect it. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, you're healed." Not necessarily. But moving forward, learning my condition, learning how to manage it through diet, exercise, it has changed, meaning I've always looked to learn more about my condition, because the more I learn, the more I know how to help myself and help others. My most recent experience this year led to my new diagnosis of sickle cell retinopathy, or they call it proliferative sickle cell retinopathy. Working with a hematologist, which is something I would definitely say is very, very important if you do have sickle cell, because I did lab work. My hematologist said, your iron levels are regular, but your iron saturation is kind of low. Well, whenever we dug into that, that's whenever I looked at myself. I told my husband, I said, "Do you know that you having a low iron saturation, it decreases the oxygenation in the eyes, and it'll make," they call it like little formations in your eye, which ultimately block blood vessels, causes it to pull on your retina. That is what led to my retina detachment.
So you had to have a surgery for that, retinal detachment surgery.
And I had to have I had two. The first one was a vitrectomy, which is where they extract the fluid that's in your eye.
Okay.
And then they go in and correct and redetach the retina. I was in the process of healing from that one, which it was very extensive. Whenever my gas bubble, which is something that they extract in to keep the retina in place, started shrinking, it ended up shrinking faster than I healed. I ended up having another retinal detachment.
Is this a fairly common procedure?
It's normal. From what the doctor tells me, for someone with SC. It's more common for those with SC to have visual problems. The second detachment, he told me, was due to my condition. It was strenuous. It was very scary, because going blind, it got to a point to where my first procedure, whenever I started seeing black dots, and usually that's a sign of, an increase in your floaters that could lead to it detaching again. And the scariest part of that was not getting to the doctor on time. And my vision went out to where I couldn't see in that eye, which was...
Well, I'm glad you're talking about it, because there might be someone listening,
right,
has, if they've heard of someone having this, or they might be experiencing it themselves.
But I was grateful to get in after that, and at the time that I did, the doctor told me that I wasn't supposed to have central vision, which is your driving vision right in front of you, and that was a scary thing for me.
I wanted to ask you this. You're a board member, and you also are an advocate for people with disabilities. So how do you balance everything?
It's a struggle every day. It's something that I constantly pray about and have to manage. I'm always putting my kids first. I'm a very selfless person. I always tend to do more for others than myself sometimes. But when it comes down to my health, like I said, recent things, that's whenever I begin to say, okay, I need to be proactive, because mommy's no good. I can't take care of the kid. But to balance it, me and Dad kind of work as a team, like with his work schedule. A lot of times it's learning our children's do's and don'ts, what things trigger them. I hate to use that word, meaning there's certain things that Micah will do to aggravate Mila, certain things she will do to aggravate him. Once we learn that and then learn how to balance like time management, spending time together. It's a constant back and forth, something that we have to work at. And I think that varies from family to family. Ours is tough because we're limited on outside help. It's just me and my husband. We do it and pray about it. We're very consistent with being there for our children, spending time together, doing things that they like. And we're not afraid of staying home. Like for us, I think the biggest thing is we prioritize our sleep so much.
Oh boy, I love that.
I can sleep all day. But a lot of people, I don't think they understand just how important, sleep is in getting rest, especially whenever you're caring with someone that requires more needs. You know, it can be very draining mentally, not just
Sierra,
physically.
Yeah, you've definitely touched a chord, and probably a lot of our listeners as well, because my daughter Lexi, you know, she's 28 years old, but she doesn't necessarily sleep every night. Sometimes she just wakes up and wants to party. It feels like, you know, she's just ready. Lexi does not have a trach, but she does have to be suctioned whenever she has a certain amount of sputum, and then she'll start coughing. And of course we have a monitor, so we'll listen to go suction her. And then sometimes I can fall back asleep and sometimes I don't. And sometimes that might be one night a week. That could be 3 or 4 nights a week. I don't have 24-hour care for Alexi, but sometimes on Saturdays I do. And it's like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this.
Right.
And I'm going to sleep when I can. But it would be great to sleep, 8 hours a night. And that's a goal for sure. So I'm glad you touched on that. Are there any other things that you'd like to talk about?
I'll say this, and the only reason I believe I should share this because of all the different things that's going on in the world. For me, seeing children that have been diagnosed with autism are constantly being, I don't want to say neglected. A lot of them are dying due to, we don't know the cause. I mean, the news puts it out there. That's not my job to say what this mom was doing wrong. However, what I would say is that if you do have a child that has special needs, please reach out to someone for help. It is a very overwhelming thing, very, very hard. And a lot of times people don't seek help. That's something I can tell you that I also need to work on. In the event where it comes down to harming a child or elopement, as far as something else I'm going to say, because I notice a lot of parents who do not have autistic children, they are constantly bashing other moms who are and saying, well, why didn't you watch your child? So I can speak from experience. Our son Micah has been an elopement risk since he's been little. He would run away, he would run out in the street no matter where we are. Even though that was a very challenging thing, it didn't stop me from saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to look up whatever tools, resources it is I need to keep my child safe, because we can't just say, oh, well, this is this. Oh, well, I'm just going to deal with it or let it go. Even though it's overwhelming, we have to keep fighting. It's hard, but for us, we just kind of learned what works for him. Learn what works for your child and do the best that you can, but never give up on them. Reach out for others who may need help. Another important thing, in case there are other moms who aren't aware of this, but there are a lot of alarms, safety features you can implement into your home for children like this. One thing in particular for us was when we go out in public, we have a armband that attaches to us and attaches to him. I mean, it's not expensive, but it has greatly helped decrease those chances and also allowed us to feel comfortable and sleep at night knowing we have alarms and cameras everywhere, because if something happens, we'll know.
That's great advice, Sierra. Again, I want to thank you for sharing your story, your family's story. We've learned a lot today, so thank you for being here. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap up this edition of This Ability Podcast. So thank you all for listening, and be sure to like our social media pages. And thanks again, Sierra, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to This Ability Podcast. Our mission is simple: to highlight ability over disability and to create a space where stories are heard, valued, and celebrated. If today's episode encouraged you, inspired you, or helped you to see ability in a new way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every download and every share helps us to continue amplifying stories from the disability community. We would also like to sincerely thank our Season 3 underwriters, Hassling Properties and Red Oaks Cottage School, for believing in our mission and helping make this platform possible. Their support allows us to to continue highlighting stories of resilience, advocacy, and inclusion. If you or your organization are interested in becoming an underwriter for this Ability Podcast, we would love to connect with you. You can reach us by email at thisabilitypod@gmail.com or send us a message through any of our social media platforms. Until next time, keep learning, keep advocating, and keep celebrating every ability.